What's up, guys, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the NeoVintage podcast. I'm Jabril, and I'm here with
Steve. Hope everyone's doing well out there.
If you guys who have never seen the show before, we're just two guys that like to talk over the biggest stories in gaming, but we always like to start with what we've been playing. So, Steve, what you been playing?
Yeah, a couple different things. We've been off a few weeks, so finally completed the campaign, the story mode to Final Fantasy 16.
Oh, nice.
Brought that journey to an end finally. About 40 hours, I think I clocked in 41 hours, so you were pretty much on the money there. And I really enjoyed it. I heard so much commotion about how the story ends up wrapping up, and I get some of the complaints now. I do think they left things slightly ambiguous, no defined things, sort of open to your interpretation. I interpreted it the way I did. I thought it was good. I do have issues that it without spoilers, it is a familiar ending, especially to for those who play all the Final Fantasies. It is a familiar ending. Besides that, though, I mean, what a fantastic game! A game that really, when it was firing on all cylinders, was amazing. I mean, those final scenes, these characters, 40 hours, I grew to really care for a lot of these characters and the relationships that they built with each other. Clive and Jill especially, and Clive and Joshua obviously is a big deal, and it's really important to see it all really unfold. So I was really, really excited to finish it, give my time to it. I think the boss battles were really great, really fantastic, and I know we kind of just talked about it offline, but obviously they also just have announced some DLC coming. We'll see what they do with that, and a PC port for those interested. So it's really exciting. So I'm glad because really the end of August and really into September, the rest of the year, we have a busy year. I'm so glad I was able to sort of at least put that to rest. I finished it because it was sort of lingering for a while, and the game is long. But we have a very, very busy time coming up, trying to balance all these games. I'm glad that that's not something I have to juggle as well, though. I really liked it. I think it does need to be discussed when it's that sort of game of the year contender, just because it does everything so well. But I do understand people's issues with it. So I'm really happy and really enjoyed Final Fantasy 16. Continued a lot more of my Baldur's Gate journey there. Like we've discussed before, that we're not super huge into CRPGs. This is sort of an anomaly. Everyone was talking about it. I beat Act 1. I spent a long time in Act 1, I think longer than I needed to. But I'm at that point where I believe I'm going to, back and forth. Again, like we said, a lot of games are coming out. I started Act 2. Very different vibe from Act 1. It feels less tutorial. So many new characters I'm meeting, so I'm trying to manage everything. You can only carry so many people in your party, but everyone's so interesting. Like, I kind of want to see what this person does, There's a friend where, like, once a week, usually I bounce different decisions we've made. He's got people in his party that I never even heard, and then I found out it's because I did the mission that led to their death. It's a really interesting to be in that discourse of, what did you do? What does it, I have a character who is suffering from an ailment, and I see other people's playthrough, and he just isn't suffering from it. It's so interesting. Still playing it both on PC and Steam Deck. Again, besides the obviously graphic qualities, it still runs great on both. So again, like I said before, Baldur's Gate's going to be sort of that slow burn on the background type game for me. Taking the big pauses for the Final Fantasies, the Spider-Mans, and everything else coming up. The other thing I've been playing, and I don't know why I was registered in this, but I am playing Sega's. They're doing a closed beta, and I've spent some time with Sega's hero shooter called Hyenas. I don't remember this game at all. I got an email saying I was accepted. It auto-downloaded on my Steam, so I was playing it on PC. It's super weird. I don't even remember seeing... After a while, I do remember seeing some trailers, but this was announced a while ago. And it's really weird because it feels so late to the party. The sort of hero shooter, battle pass type deal. The only thing that kind of gets me with this is... Not only am I sort of a Sega fanboy, and I don't know what they're going to do monetization-wise, but the part of the game I play a little bit more than usual is the PvE mode. So there's only two sections you can play: PvP, PvP VE because it's 5 groups of 3 and the CPU team, or you can play just you, the 2 people, your team, 2 others, and versus the computers. And it's sort of like it's like they're calling it a hero shooter. It kind of is, kind of isn't. They do have distinct quote unquote heroes, different characters you can play, but it's more of a heist game. So you go in, you have to break into as many safes as you can to get a certain amount of loot, and then get to an extraction point. Now again, I'm playing that PvE mode where it's just me and 2 people, and we seem to have a great time. It's not super hard. It's super fun. The game runs really well. I think the game has a lot of charm where we've discussed multiple times where too many things look and want to look like Fortnite, and this doesn't really. This actually has more of a Borderlands look to it in a sense. It's sort of cel shaded, but there's a lot of play with while you're running and shooting with gravity zones and being able to use that to your advantage, boosting the gravity zones, and everything is very Sega Easter egg. Like a lot of the loot is a lot of 80s and 90s things. Like some of the loots are like a Sonic the Hedgehog statue. Other things are like baseball caps or cassette tapes with music from the 80s and 90s. That's the loot that you're picking up, which is really interesting to me. At least it's like small things. What you use to break into a safe, they have some name for it, but it's literally just a Sega Genesis that you blow a cartridge in, you put it in there. It's like a lot of little Easter eggs, and it's actually kind of interesting. I kind of liked it. I think they are trying to kind of get away with something here because right now, again, closed beta, they give you a lot of in-game currency that I'm buying characters and cosmetics. I can see that's probably going to be descaled when the full game launches. I had to do some digging. They previously said that it will not be a free-to-play game, so the monetization will be accurate. They've sort of recanted that, and they said that they've looked at different pay ways. So I'm assuming this is going to go to free-to-play, and it's going to be like super monetization and nickel and diming you, and it's going to be kind of bad. But I wanted to give a shout out because I have enjoyed the couple times I've played it. I've spent a few hours with it, and there's 2 other people I play online with, and it's really fun. There is a charm to it. I just wish it didn't go the route of pure multiplayer hero shooters because there is no like story mode. You know, each character has their little intro, but there's no like sort of story mode you can get through unless it's something they're saving for later. It looks like it is just a PvP, PvE thing. The maps look kind of similar. You're basically attacking these ships in space. So I do think it needs more content in a way. I think if they're gonna fall back on generic looking heroes, there's a handful that look pretty cool, but if you're gonna really lean on the gameplay, you got to have more content there. Maps, more modes. Again, I wish they would have stuck to some sort of story mode. But all in all, I got to say, I am pretty positive on the game. It runs really well. So I'm excited to see what else they do with it and to see if they're going to reveal this. Because, again, it's a game I had no idea existed, let alone that I was signed up to enter into the beta. So it's a wild one. The last thing I've been playing, and I'm only about 5-6 hours, I am going down the Starfield rabbit hole. I spent some time with it. I did do the Game Pass trick to play it. So that's how I'm playing it. Well, so if you have Game Pass, you can preload the Starfield.
Yep.
And if you buy the premium edition upgrade for $30, you got to So for like $40, you get to play it, I guess technically early. So that's the little loophole that I pulled. So that's how I've been playing it because I could not drop $100 on this. I don't. There's no way. For the people who do that, I think I said $10 for PC Game Pass. I think it's $35 for the premium edition upgrade. You gotta be really careful because there's a lot of stuff in those menus. And so, yeah, that gives you whatever the pre-order bonuses in like a deluxe suit. But the big thing is it gives you early access. And so I've only spent about 5 hours into it. And for people thinking this was going to be a revolutionary Bethesda game, I think it is, to its core, a Bethesda game. There's going to be a lot of things you're going to notice. But it does seem that they've learned a few things and a lot of stuff, and a lot of the stuff you and I have picked out, especially with Todd Howard, and a lot of these we've been talking about Starfield for so long, and a lot of that stuff's come to fruition that, that it wasn't true. So the game runs well technically. So over the technical aspect, it's not a Bugthesda fest as everyone likes to go at. Is there some pop-ins? Sure. They've said that the game is very demanding on certain PCs. I haven't had too many issues. There is a lot of lock systems. PC, when you play a game on PC, you're usually more open to FOV sliders and frame rate sliders. They're very strict on what they want the game to be able to do. And we knew this because I think on consoles it's going to be locked to 30, even on a Series X. So
That's crazy.
Yeah, which is it is nuts. But through and through, this is akin to Fallout in space. It's so weird to talk about it because I could go on a huge tangent. It is a Bethesda game. That's what you're going to be playing here. When you think, if you were a huge fan, I know you and I enjoyed a lot of Outer Worlds, which was always compared to a Fallout in space. This is obviously a little bit more in the galactic world like that. I think the story's really well written. I think a lot of these characters are well written. There's a character you meet early on, Sarah. She's no Piper, but she's pretty fun to have in my party. So it's hard to talk about what's the game like. The game is a Bethesda game. Go here, get a mission, go talk to this person, either shoot and you have a shooting gallery, or you do some persuasion and stuff like that. So it's nothing that we've seen that haven't seen in a Bethesda game before. The big thing that people would like to discuss is sort of the star traveling and all that. It's fine. There is some star space, traveling, nowhere near the extent of something like No Man's Sky. You're going to spend a lot of time in the menus, actually, to get what you need to do in Starfield, getting to different planets and galaxies and weird solar parts. A lot of that's menu-based. And speaking of menu, if you haven't seen anyone stream it, the menus are one of the worst things I've ever seen. It is a ridiculously convoluted menu. There's a menu inside of a menu to get to the pause menu. A lot of stuff that they need to really fix. It's really weird. I'm surprised Bethesda launched it this way. I don't know if they were just trying to be so new over the top. They don't want anything to reminisce too much of their previous games. This being their first new IP in a long time. It's been Elder Scrolls and Fallout for so long. But it's getting there. Is it the prettiest game? No, they are using their new creative engine, so the game sometimes just looks like Fallout in space. The models don't look the greatest, but the voice acting is there. A lot of familiar voice actors. The story starts off very slow, but it seems to pick up the pace. In a non-Bethesda fashion, I kind of started just mainlining because I saw a lot of people discuss this. Those first 4 to 5 hours, just do the main missions, because the side missions, one, are very boring. Can lock you out at a certain point because you don't have certain items, and just doesn't get interesting until later on. So once you have a little bit more access to your full systems of the game, I think it'll be a little bit more fun. So that's the game I'm going to be playing for a little while now. I'm still warm on it. I think when I see all the reviews, 7 and 8s, I think that's very justifiable. Anything above that is nuts. Anything below that is nuts. So that's all I've been up to. Kind of a smorgasbord here of different things, but it's a busy season, so that's all I've been playing. What have you been up to?
Yeah, unfortunately not Starfield. I've been watching things about it. It looks very good for the most part. I think it looks obviously much needed for the Xbox ecosystem. That's the thing I keep thinking about. I was like, I just had my fingers crossed just for the Xbox people, where I'm like, yo, please don't be a disaster. That's all I'm asking. I don't expect this to light everybody's world on fire, but I was like, they need something, man. Don't Redfall us again, but it looks good enough at the very least. I think some people are gonna love it. I see some people talking pretty harshly about it who have never played it, and obviously we know what that is. So I'm very excited to jump into it, but I probably won't be playing it until the proper launch, which I think is Tuesday, which is kind of annoying.
Tuesday. Yeah,
I was really hoping it was coming out Monday because of Labor Day and everybody being off, and I was like, man, I want one day just off of work to be able to play it. But it looks like the first day it comes out is the first day I go back to work. So oh well. In terms of games I have been playing, nothing of substance, to be honest with you. I've played a little bit of Super Monkey Ball, the Banana Blitz HD version on PS5. It was on sale, and I bought it for very cheap, literally $1 something, $2 maybe. And I've just been playing that. I like Monkey Ball. I'm not very good at it, but I've always liked those games, so I've played a little bit of that. I played a little bit of this game called Ghost Song. It is a Metroidvania on Game Pass right now, and for the most part, every Metroidvania that comes out of relative notoriety I try to play. The only one I haven't played, as kind of just a heads up, is Blasphemous 2. One thing, no one told me this was coming out, so I was a little perturbed that was just out one day. I was like, what the hell? Like, nobody told me. So I put that on my wish list. I haven't started it yet, but I'm going to. Probably by the next show, I probably will have started Blasphemous 2. In the meantime, I have been playing Ghost Song. It's a pretty standard sci-fi Metroidvania. They have some interesting abilities related to the fact that your gun overheats pretty dramatically, like really fast. But you can use a melee attack with your hot gun that does extra damage. So it's kind of a weird rhythm you get into where it's like shoot, 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 overheat, melee, back to shooting type of thing. And it's a lot about a rhythm depending on the enemy that you're fighting. It's pretty difficult. I have things that I don't love about it, like the fact that when you start in the game you can go left and right, but left is prohibitively difficult, so they regularly throw you into things that you're not meant to do yet but you can do. So it's very much, I think, like a Dark Souls kind of line of thinking there, where it's like you can go anywhere and do anything, but obviously there are natural barriers to most players that won't be able to progress. But there have been points where I've just found it rather annoying. Like the most mundane encounters with enemies can turn into such annoying situations that I don't love the game. I don't think it's bad by any means. I think some people could probably get a kick out of it. But I just find this game, every time I play it, it's just I want to play something else. I kind of want to play Castlevania every time I play it. Yeah. And then lastly, I've been playing Vampire Survivor. I've gotten the second DLC. And I also I completely forgot that this DLC came out. And so I finally picked it up. It's a couple dollars. It's like max like $3 or something like that. And I've had a really fun time with it. I like the new characters. The new maps is probably what I like the most. Some of the new items are pretty cool. There's some cool balancing happening there. For the most part, this is a DLC that, like all the new material, you should play after you've completed a majority of just the base game stuff. Just because things kind of ramp up pretty crazy. Again, it's pretty much in line with the rest of the stuff. You get the map, and things get crazy around the 25-minute mark, I would say. So you, for the most part, you can like take your time to figure things out. But things ramp up pretty difficulty, and it has that. And this is not a spoiler, but it has that kind of like death barrier where you get swarmed by death enemies, and I still get taken out regularly from that. Again, around the 25 to 30-minute mark. So overall, very, very fun. I like the DLC. Definitely worth the money. If you're looking for an excuse to go back to Vampire Survivor and you just want to go back for 2-3 hours, I highly recommend it. It's not so transformative. It's not completely revamped the game that I see you getting another 20 out of it necessarily. But if you're looking for something to go back to kind of just entertain yourself a little bit more, highly recommend it. Definitely worth the money. One of the best value games, in my opinion, that has come out in quite a while, just because cumulatively I've spent still I think less than $10 on this game, which is insane.
Yeah, just not nuts to think.
Yeah, in the era of spending $70 for half the time that I've spent in that game, the fact that I've spent so little and had so much fun with it, and it still continues to be regularly patched. He's regularly adding content all the time. There is a crap ton of characters. I've played for, I don't know my exact playtime, but I've played for quite a while. And definitely more than like 30-40 hours or something like that, I think. But I've played for a decent amount of time, and there's still regularly things that I find. I've done all the upgrades. I've gotten most of the characters that I can find, but there's still different maps I need to get, and they have the little arcana things that you need to do. So there's lots of stuff to keep you busy if you're interested in doing that. So highly recommend it to anybody who's a Vampire Survivor fan that has maybe lapsed. And if you haven't jumped in it at all, I think now is a good time, because I love some of the logistical changes that the main developer has made with some of these new weapons. There's some really cool late game stuff that you can do. And what I like about the game now is with all these new maps, there's a lot more, I think, flexibility in terms of strats. Early on, I think since you and I were playing the game pretty early, it was pretty much a like garlic or nothing type of strat for the most part, like to start. Yeah. That's definitely not the case anymore. There are plenty of maps where, like, if you start with garlic, you will be building a run that will be disadvantageous later on. So, like, there are definitely maps that serve way better to, like, projectile runs. So you'll do, like, a wand, or you'll do, like, a little fire wand, or Holy Bible, stuff like there are lots of different strats you can take depending on the thing. So these days, I don't actually ever use garlic, for example, which I know is insane because those first 5 hours, like, that's the only way you can survive. Yeah. And so nowadays, nowadays, like, I never use garlic. It's essentially a waste that past like a certain point anyways, because if enemies are getting that close to you, you're in trouble anyways. So you want to be keeping enemies at arm's length as much as possible. So you definitely want to keep it projectile. So it's small differences like that I think make the game quite different now than it used to be. So it's a great time to jump into it if you haven't thus far, I would say.
Yeah. That's one of those things that I do want to go back to. It's been a little while.
Yeah, and the good thing is it's one of those games I don't think there's like such an insane difficulty spike that, like, if you walk away from Elden Ring for like 6 months, you're kind of screwed going back. But like, good luck. But Vampire Survivor, like, if you remember the things that you're supposed to do, which essentially is just choosing the right items at the right time and walking, basically, you'll be fine. So the good thing is you can jump into it at any point you want.
Yeah, I do gotta get back to it. You kind of, maybe I'll do it soon.
Do it before it gets busy, I would say. Because what's like Assassin's Creed Mirage and Spider-Man and all this kind of crazy stuff comes out, it's gonna be a lot tougher.
It's gonna be nuts, yeah.
But in the time that we were gone, we got a pretty much full breakdown on the PlayStation Portal, or formerly known as the PlayStation, or the what is it, Project Q. Project Q. Let's talk about that real quick. We have Sony has announced that its PlayStation Portal, and it's so hard for me to say portal and not portable, streaming handheld will launch November 15th with pre-orders open now. Announced in the PlayStation blog, Sony has revealed that the PlayStation Portal will be released in select markets on the November date. The PlayStation Portal doesn't work without a PS5, so it's a companion device. And unlike the Nintendo Switch or PlayStation Vita, no games are run on the handheld itself. The entire PS5 system is instead streamed to the device, letting users play games and run other apps as if it's on the console itself, and it retails for $199.99. So also a number of influencers have already gotten hands-on with it. They have been relatively controlled with certain information, so we don't have concrete answers on like battery life and stuff like that, but people have gotten hands-on, and it's basically confirmed a lot of the ideas going forward. So no native processing, it's a complete streaming device. It is a full companion device, so if you are thinking like successor to some previous handhelds, the best way I could describe it to people, because some people have asked me about it, is just it's a DualSense with a screen. It's not a portable. It is not a Steam Deck. It's not a portable game device, and you need to get that out of your head. Like, it is a controller with a screen. It's closer to, it's the backbone, if anything. It's the backbone too. You know what I mean? Yeah. Way more than it is a proper handheld. And once you start reconfiguring your mind around that, I think it makes a little bit more sense. So we've spoken about whether this device is for us or not. I have been open about my interest in it, but also my skepticism about this idea of this device. Like, this device is perfectly designed for me. I share a TV. I love playing handheld. I'm not a remote person, but from what I understand, the remote play using this device is dramatically better than streaming to your phone because it's dedicated hardware for that. But at the same time, my use case, I think, is not everybody else's. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think this is going to have widespread appeal, to be honest with you. But based on the information that they've released so far, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, they really are speaking to people like us who asked, sort of wanted this. When we were talking about it, when it was still Project Q, we were talking about, where people's systems are hooked up. Like we've talked before, mine is hooked up technically in my living room. So when I'm in my bedroom, late, at night, wrapping it up or whatever, I'd love to have a device where I could take out and still do the PlayStation, or if my wife is watching a movie on the TV, I don't have to get a 15-foot HDMI, plug it into my PS5, and run it to a separate screen. Just being able to pick up that device and do it. And I've tried the remote play, and it really doesn't work too well. I have issues connecting. So again, having a device that will hopefully that's the one thing it's supposed to do. It should work well. Is really my thing. Pricing is exactly what we thought. I think we guessed 200, 250. I think max we were hoping for. So it was 250. And again, having it that it's DualSense and just basically a small tablet with no natural hardware, software to be running on it. I think that's a super solid price, especially when you think about what they were charging for like the VR, which is different boat, but that was a very high end device. Right? Yes, exactly. So I think 200 is way more friendly again, and I think they are advertising correctly. They're not advertising it as a successor. They're not mentioning. No, it's a separate companion device to stream your PS5 in basically the same household. You're basically going to need to be in your home. So I'm excited for it. I haven't pre-ordered yet just because, again, I've had such a bad experience with the PlayStation website themselves. But I think I will, once I see a little bit more and once I see some of this, a few lingering questions I have, just once they are answered one way or another, I think I will definitely probably be getting this as soon as I can. Because it just speaks to me. It is what I want it to be. I would love a PlayStation, full device, but we're not getting that. So being able to play my PlayStation 5 a little bit more freely while I'm at home is pretty much a no-brainer.
Yeah, that was one thing I wanted to ask, is if you had been swayed one direction or another, whether to pre-order or not.
I want to, right? Like I've put in the cart, gone all the way to checkout, and I'm just like, I'm like, man, I don't know. But I do think probably by the end of the day, I'll be convinced. I'll convince myself to be like, you're gonna use it. Look at what I use. I do the same thing technically on my PC, right? My PC is also technically in my living room. When I'm in my bedroom, I get on my Steam Deck and the cloud. Again, that runs negatively on Steam Deck, but just being able to continue my game, whether I'm sitting at my desk or not, is. I know it's like a small convenience thing, but it's a pretty big deal, especially when life gets nuts. Sometimes laying in bed is the only time I have to unwind, and I don't see the harm. It'd be nice to, November 15th, so Spider-Man would be out at that time. Go in, swing, do a couple side missions in Spider-Man. Sure, the fantastic, great things I would probably want to play on the big screen, but doing these side missions or playing some of this other stuff would be fine, if not perfect, on the Portal. So it definitely is for me, and I will end up getting it for sure.
Well, the good thing is and this is from somebody who has already pre-ordered it, so obviously I'm in. I think I'm going to use the hell out of this system. I think I'm probably, if the remote is right and it plays as good as it says it was, and I already checked the Wi-Fi specs, which you should have, and I should be good on that front. If it is as good as they say, I will probably play this a majority of the time. Not all the time. There's absolutely going to be games where I want to see on my TV when possible, but there are absolutely moments where I'm probably going to play a bulk on this because I just prefer handheld when possible. But so I do think these are going to be sitting, though. Like, I do think when it's all said and done, these are going to launch. The people who are going to be interested are going to move on it. And I don't think it's going to be the uphill battle necessarily that VR2 is facing, because that's a whole different can of worms. But I do think these are going to be sitting. So I think worst case scenario, like, I think you'll be able to walk into a store and get these. Like, this is not going to be a PS5 situation. I think these are, like, there'll be excess inventory for this, because I think this is such a hard item to predict from Sony's side about public interest, because there is immense public interest in handhelds right now, especially with the Steam Deck. But this is not a handheld, but I don't know if the mainstream person knows that yet. You know what I mean? And they need to still work on that, because it is such a specific use case. Like, for example, when I was playing Tears of the Kingdom, and I was playing it on the TV, and I was going to map I forget what it's called, but it's like the cave system place, you know what I'm talking about? Like the flip side, whatever that's called. And I was trying to map out a lot of that. So it's pretty grindy work, you know what I mean? You're just walking from little lighthouse to little lighthouse, which is effectively just the shrines on the other side. And so I would, and I'm, you know, I share a TV in the living room just like you do. So the TV was needed. So I just I walked over, undocked the Switch, and just sat there. And it was such a great experience because I was able to grind it out. There's something about being handheld and being able to grind things out. Like I put like a podcast on, and I just go. And I've done that for years, and I love it. And so being able to just undock that seamless experience. And I can't tell you how many times I've been playing something on PS5, like grinding out the hunts in Final Fantasy 16 or something like that. That would have been perfect. Or doing like the little fetch quest, side quest things in Final Fantasy 16, for example, that I would have loved to just walk over, undock my PlayStation really quick, and play it like that way, whether on the couch or bed or whatever. Like that's the use case that I think. So I feel like this device is going to be so popular with like 30-somethings. Like I will lie. Like the early barons and like the older gamers who only have so much time to play, who are like sharing TVs with people. Like I don't think like the hardcore people are probably going to care too much about this, because obviously you're sacrificing some degree of visual fidelity. There is going to be a little bit of latency no matter what. So I think it's going to be hard. Like, I wouldn't suggest you fire up Tekken 8 with this necessarily, unless you're ready to get washed online or whatever. But like, so I think there are like natural limitations to it. But I do think there is a market for this. I think that's a hard market to predict. Like, it's such a niche. You know what I mean? Like, so many people, because it's effectively for people who like to play handheld but never do that outside. I never take my Switch outside. Like I maybe a couple times, like, and it was to your house. So, I haven't done it a ton of times. So every time I'm playing handheld, it's literally in my house. I like the form factor of something in my hands, you know, playing in my face. So it works for me, but yeah, I know there's an entire market when they talk about like the growing handheld market. Like the entire Asian market, for example, that are on trains playing, like that, they're completely out of this. All the people who were going crazy on PSP and Vita, they're unsatisfied by this device. So that's an entire thing that Sony has to take into effect, is that they can't look at Steam Deck numbers to gauge public interest in this device. They almost need to gauge like Backbone interest, which I don't know if that's an easy thing to like how many people are using the Backbone device. Like I don't know if I would imagine they have some analytics on that, but yeah, it's a tough thing to predict. So that's why I feel like there's gonna be excess inventory of this for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of my thing too. I'm not hoping, you know, I'm not too worried, right? Like it's gonna be sold out. I think, especially if I can, once like you know, they usually do the exclusive orders through their website, then once Amazon and all these places get it, where you have a little bit more lenient with, because I checked the specs and it should work perfectly fine where I'm at, but whatever reason it doesn't work, being able to go back and have a return, like in a store or something like that, is always going to be convenient as well for me.
Yeah, you know, when I heard about this finally announced, one of the first things I looked at was, like, I was just curious about reception, because you and I already had discussed our feelings about it. I wanted to see now that it was out, because when the whole Project Q rumor thing is, people don't pay attention to rumors like that. Not everybody. The hardcore do, but like a lot of people don't. So I was curious now when they did like the concrete announcement and it broke out. Like I had somebody Snapchat me. He doesn't pay attention to games like that, and he had heard about it. He's like, "What do you think about this? Like, what is this?" And I had to explain it to him. And it's been a long time since I've had to do that for somebody. So that tells me that like this does need a little bit of communication. Like when the last time that happened, I think was the first PlayStation VR. I had people asking me about like, "What is this?" and like, why is it asking me to have a PS3 controller to use it? You know what I mean? So like, I was very curious about what the average consumer was thinking about this, and I noticed that this is predictable, but naturally a lot of frustration from people that this is not the Vita 2 when they want dedicated hardware. Do you think frustration about what this is not could impact sales at all, or do you think that's probably going to be a vocal minority?
Yeah, it's going to be probably a vocal minority. I think the fact that this was all done, I don't remember how they announced this. I think it was just a blog post or something. They didn't do this at like an E3 or one of these big events Super that you Bowl have. Trailer, yeah, you know, that you have the the hardcores, but you have a lot of casuals who like, oh yeah, I just watched this to see the next big thing. This was announced, I think, on their blog, so again, the casuals aren't going to PlayStation blog to see what's up. So I think it hopefully will be fine. I think if it comes to a point where it is in stores, it's going to be relied on the person selling or the person running the counter. If they're going to be like, hey, this isn't a portable PlayStation. I know it's, nuts enough that the abbreviation is PSP, but thankfully they're not referring it to that in any way, shape, or form. Because there could be some confusion. I think once it starts getting to people's hands, there's going to be a slight confusion. But I think if they keep their verbiage very clear that you need a PS5, then I think it'll be hopefully fine. Hopefully.
Yeah, like I'm thinking like GameStop displays, like that's the concern I have is because you worked at GameStop, so you know exactly what I'm talking about here. When you have like a mother walking in for her young son to buy her like a nice Christmas present or something like that, and she's like, "Oh, a new PlayStation," and she grabs that, but he doesn't have a PS5, so they need to be very explicit. Like she's like, "Oh, $199 for the new PlayStation handheld, sure," like, and they need to be very explicit, like PlayStation Portal. Companion device, PS5 required to play. Like they need to be very explicit, and I know they might be apprehensive to do that because they don't want to shoot themselves in the foot and undersell its capabilities, but at the same time there absolutely is going to be people like kids getting this for Christmas that don't have PS5s. I already know it's going to happen, like and I'm sympathetic for them. But before we move on, I did want to ask you one question about the name. Now that we have the concrete name, PlayStation Portal, I've seen a lot of debate about. Some people like it a lot. Some people are very skeptical about it because of its proximity to the name Portable. So it's effectively another PSP. What do you think? Do you like the name? Do you have any concerns about like brand confusion? I have less concerns about that just because of how long PSP has been out of the public zeitgeist. But seeing the name PSP again, I could see lapsed gamers who don't pay attention being confused also by that and like, oh, the PSP's back. Oh shit, cool, and grabbing it. You know what I mean? So like, what are your thoughts about the name?
Yeah, at first I was like, okay, interesting name, because when I started looking into it, obviously, because this is the full-fledged release, I was like, okay, Portal, that's an interesting name. Is there like some sort of hub or nothing? Is there some sort? And it's not. I think there is a part of me where I'm like, it's a little close to Portable, guys. You're mixing, but it's also like you said, the Vita wasn't called PSP2 or anything like that. It's been so long since the PSP is, like you said, been a relevant thing. You can't go into GameStop, ask for a PSP, and get the wrong one. You know what I'm talking about? So I think
God of War PSP with Kratos on it.
Yeah. So the people asking like, oh, isn't there going to be confusion? No, because it's not. Yeah. It's not that. Could I don't know what else they would have named it. Again, you get to be. They had to be careful with it. You couldn't call the PlayStation 5 Portal because again, it's going to sound like a portable PS5, and that's not what it is. So I think it's an interesting name. I get the sort of theme of it, the whole Portal thing connecting to the PS5. So it is just I think it's fine. I think yeah, there are people out there who's gonna complain it's not a PSP, but again, they're not marketing it with the initial PSP for PlayStation Portal. So I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, when I was thinking about it, because when I first heard Portal, I didn't have the best reaction to it because I was like, yeah, that is that's pretty close. And I would avoid any proximity if necessary. And then naturally the question is like, okay, if not Portal, then what? Like, what would you name it? And obviously I'm not a marketing person, so I couldn't give them an answer. My mind immediately went to like something that could emphasize the second screen capabilities of it. So some kind of like mirror or something like that is what I went to first. Not saying PlayStation Mirror is a good name, not saying that, but I'm saying something like that, like the ability to have that second screen thing might be a little bit clearer than Portal, which is a little bit of an ambiguous type of term. But at the same time, yeah, if not Portal, I couldn't think of something better. So I'm not necessarily mad about it. I just, the moment I saw the name, I have this visual of all the people we went to high school with that haven't played games since, 2012 or something like that. Don't even know what the Vita is. The last thing they ever touched in terms of a handheld from the PlayStation ecosystem was the PSP, where they're playing, God knows, Splinter Cells or something in there. And they go back into a game. They go into a GameStop and they see a new, beautiful handheld-looking device, beautiful controllers on the side there, and it's the PlayStation Portal. And I don't know if they could immediately see that it's something else. You know what I mean? And also, I know they talk about the fact that the PS5 is way more available now, but depending on your market, a lot of the people can't walk into stores and they still can't get PS5s. Not every market has been fixed yet. No. A lot have, but a lot haven't as well. Like out here where I'm at right now, if you go into a GameStop, there's no PS5s. There's no way. You'll never see it. But again, your mileage may vary. Like some places do have it. But I wouldn't be surprised if you could walk into a GameStop at, Black Friday time this year when this is out, and there'll be a PlayStation Portal there. And I just wonder if they're like, oh, the $200 version of that, like, hell yeah, I want to play God of War in the PS5 ecosystem, but I can't maybe afford a PS5, or I can't. And I just worry about that confusion, man. Like I worry about the casual influx of people who are going to have this device, and it hasn't been explicit. So I'm very curious to see what Sony's branding is and how out there they're going to be with the fact that this is a companion device. Because if I was them, I'm plastering that everywhere, that little stamp in the corner there, right? Yep. Like you need a PS5 to play this. So we'll see, but at the same time, I don't see this thing selling a ton anyways. You know what I mean? Like I think it has its niche. It'll move within that, and then I think it's gonna fall off a cliff. Like I think most of the sales of this are probably gonna be super front loaded. So we're talking November to February maybe, and then then it's probably gonna fall off a cliff, and like people will be on to the next thing, and everybody's gonna be like, okay, when is the PS5 Pro or Slim or whatever is coming out? Like I think that is what people are waiting for. They don't care about this because I think a lot of people who even pay attention to close headlines, the moment they're like, oh, this is not a Vita successor, all right, and they clicked away. I think there'll be the people like us who are stoked again, because I'm stoked for this. I can't wait to play this. But I think a lot of questions need to be answered.
Yeah, that's my one concern. I'm still sort of just waiting on, not waiting on, but just
battery time, man.
The battery time, what's that like? So I gotta go plug it in, and
it better be better than Steam Deck. There's no native processing, so it's got to be better than 5. If it's less than 5, I'm gonna be upset.
I think it's got to be. I'm assuming close to a DualSense, and I don't know. What do I get out of a DualSense? 5,
I get
6,
5 or
7
6
hours. So, which isn't
not great,
right?
But
it's not great. But I'm not playing. I'm not playing like a 6-hour session right there on my.
Yeah, it works for us. I know other people bump into issues.
Yeah, so we'll have to see. But yeah, so we're super excited for that. But we do gotta kind of turn it down to some sad news. I know it's one that I took kind of not personal, but I was very bummed out about. So Volition is shutting down and has shut down. So Volition Games has announced that its parent company, Embracer Group, is shutting the studio down. The studio was the developer behind the latest Saints Row reboot. In an update on LinkedIn, Volition said this past June, Embracer Group announced a restructuring program to strengthen Embracer and maintain its position as a leader in the video game industry. As part of the program, they evaluated strategic and operational goals and made the decision to close Volition effective immediately. Deep Silver issued its own statement after Volition released a farewell letter acknowledging the efforts of its developers and the love from its community. Quote, our thoughts go out to everyone at Volition, past and present. Quote, Deep Silver writes. We're incredibly grateful for the unforgettable work on Saints Row and Red Faction, whose IPs will live on and play on. So, really bummed. This is something we've worried about for a while. When we see these Embracer groups and everyone like that buying these just a ridiculous amount of companies, once something starts not to do well or make the returns you think, they're going to start doing that restructuring. And Embracer, a while ago, I want to say almost a year ago or a few months ago, talked about they were going to start restructuring things. Obviously, when Volition comes and releases Saints Row to such pretty bad reception, you're going to be put a big target on your back. You know, if this game did gangbusters, you'd be probably fine to an extent. But it sucks. Volition Games, this is a company that existed for, I think, 30 years. I think they just did a 30-year like YouTube video of all the stuff they've done ever since, and they've worked on so many IPs. So my heart goes out to them because that is unfortunate. You know, we are in a different time where Volition, maybe not a true AAA studio, but nowhere near these sort of lower scales. They've done things so well, and it sucks that they're sort of killed off, but you know, the IPs are getting obviously taken from them and are owned by the bigger group. So I know this sucks. My heart goes out to them. Hopefully a lot of them can bounce back and get hired. I know I always like to see when this happens, but when something like this happens, I do like to see so many of the other companies and communities start retweeting and sharing, you know, job openings here and there, and I do like to see that there is a sort of community that we want people to work. You know, they're doing stuff that we couldn't do. So, how did this hit you?
Yeah, no, it was really sad. I mean, anybody who knows me knows how big of a fan of like Saints Row I am. So when I heard this, I was like, dang, man, like I think it's very disappointing, but unfortunately not surprising. In this day and age, knowing who their owner was. And I mean, if you just look at the output for the past, I mean, we're talking, 20 years now? It's not looked great. You know what I mean? We're talking about, Saints Row, the latest one, wasn't well received. I myself didn't like it at all. But if you go before that, I mean, Saints Row 4, Agents of Mayhem, they've been kind of on a run of games that not only were not received well, but I don't think sold very well either. And so they've been in an unfortunate position where I would imagine they're not the most profitable company in the world. And if you look at the last game that really undeniably moved the needle, it was Saints Row 3. And because even, you know, like 4, like I like 4, but it's a very goofy game, but I think a lot of people were disappointed by that game as a sequel to a very beloved game. 3, I think, was one of the better selling ones for sure. But now, before 3, we're back in PS2 years, basically, or PS3 actually, early PS3. But we're talking about Red Faction days and Saints Row 2 days, like we're a long time ago. So it's been a very long time where public sentiment and just the general reception towards their products have been kind of in the toilet. And so unfortunately, like when I read this, I was like really upset by it, obviously, naturally, as a huge Saints Row fan, and I was really hoping all the developers landed on their feet and stuff like that. But I was super unsurprised because I was like, you know, to be honest with you, I had felt after the latest Saints Row, I didn't think they were going to get indefinite shots. And so I felt like, at the very least, Saints Row is going into other people's hands. That was always my feeling, which is like either Deep Silver is going to yank it or it's going to get published elsewhere or something like that. But I didn't think that Volition would get another shot after this latest Saints Row, because I feel like that was their extra shot. You know what I mean? Like this was the reboot, all new characters, all new imagery, a new place, very little connection to the previous stuff. So this was like the soft reboot of, because I don't know if it's a hard reboot continuity wise, but this was their God of War 2018. You know what I mean? Like their chance to do it again without all the weight of the previous stuff, and it just fell on its face. And so if you kind of flopped with the old iteration and you flop with the new iteration, it didn't surprise me. But I'm just hoping all the devs land on their feet. I'm curious to see what they do with the IP going forward. But yeah, not great times for Saints Row. You know, it's been on kind of a downward trajectory for quite a while. So, hopefully everybody lands, and hopefully, like if everybody else can find new jobs, and unfortunately Volition ceases existence, but maybe, the IP will be better in other people's hands, and kind of it could be a net positive when it all shakes out. But it's a very unfortunate situation.
Yeah, that's the thing. People were. I saw some people discussing online. They're like, man, they make one bad game, and I said it goes a little
One
deeper.
bad game.
Yeah, you got to look at what they. They also did that other game. It was not really a Saints Row game. It was
Agents of Mayhem.
Agents of Mayhem. It was some sort of hero shooter nonsense.
Yeah, that was pretty bad too.
So it has been a few couple duds after one another. So I think this could have been we wanted Saints Row the reboot to be we wanted it to be something else, and what we got was definitely the writing was on the wall that this wasn't going to be what it needed to be. And I mean, such weird timing too, because that is September's PlayStation Plus game. Saints Row is in that catalog, so it's unfortunate because there's gonna be a lot of people who go play, and there's gonna be people who do like it. Maybe they buy some of the DLC, but it's sort of for naught. I think it's gonna be an even longer wait now before we see another Saints Row, because it's kind of a tainted name now. People think Saints Row 1, 2, and 3, and that's it. They're like, the rest of it sucks, which. It's
not inaccurate, but
it's not it's not the craziest thing. So I do understand from a business aspect what happened.
Yeah, and I just checked to verify. Yes, Saints Row 3, and not counting like their little remaster version, was 2011. And that was kind of coming hand in hand with a Red Faction game. So we're talking about 12 years ago, effectively, since they've had a undeniable hit. Saints Row 4, Gat Out of Hell, Agents of Mayhem, and Saints Row is basically their output since then.
Wow.
And all of those have been, at the very least, questionably, like at the best, questionably received, otherwise badly received. And these, from what I understand, what I'm reading here, are probably like two-pronged. So, because, sometimes critical reception's bad, but it moves a lot of units. That happens sometimes. Like, for example, Pokemon Scarlet, one of the worst received games of that year, also is one of the best-selling games of that year. So, it doesn't always coincide, but from what I understand, pretty much since 3, it's been diminishing returns every time. So, unfortunately, it seems that if you're looking from the owner's standpoint or the publisher's standpoint, it looks numbers wise like critical mass had been hit, and it had climaxed in terms of public reception and sales. And so if it's on a downward spiral, naturally, if it's making less money, you invest less money. If you invest less money, the product suffers. And so if the product is suffering, it does worse, and thus it's kind of a feedback cycle. And so naturally, it doesn't surprise me that 12 years later they're like, we have to break the cycle. I don't like the layoffs. I think if anything, maybe Saints Row goes into other people's hands and they can focus on something maybe that they could do a little more proficiently, like a Red Faction game or something like that. Would have been my ideal. My ideal is that teams don't get shut down, but it doesn't surprise me if you just look at kind of like on a high level view.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we move on to something maybe a little bit more exciting for some people, I guess. The Atari 2600 Plus. So Atari and PlayOn, funnily enough, I think that also the same people that we're just talking about with Volition and Deep Silver, have announced the Atari 2600 Plus, a modern-day faithful recreation of the classic console that is set to launch on November 17th, 2023, so 2 days actually after the PlayStation Portal, for $129.99, and it comes with 10 games and a CX40 Plus joystick controller. The Atari 2600 Plus is available for pre-order right now, and it also features such quality of life improvements as HDMI output, USB power, and multiple screen resolutions. It's also backwards compatible with hundreds of Atari 2600 and 7800 games. So a couple things. I looked on Amazon because I also pre-ordered this. You can pre-order the console right now. You can pre-order a standalone joystick. And then also there are developers making physical new Atari games for this. Or reprints of classic games, but in new packaging. So like Berserk and stuff like that. So there's some pretty exciting stuff happening in the Atari world. I would also like to note that like the Atari that exists right now in terms of IP ownership is technically not the same Atari that made the original 2600. I don't think that team exists anymore. And that company exists. They were bought out some time ago. So just as a heads up, for some people care about that. That's why some people are really off of the VCS stuff. But it's just worth considering. But overall, when I saw this, I was interested, especially when I saw the price point. I was kind of like 130, but I immediately went to, oh, this is like the NES Mini, the SNES Mini, what Sega's done, what PlayStation done, a little plug and play with pre-installed games, which we've seen a ton of times, especially from Atari. I mean, if anybody was putting up plug and plays before everybody was Atari. But then I saw it's actually technically a new 2600. It's the console. You can put the cartridges in there. I was blown away by that. You don't see that very often. You'll see like the high end, or the Retron, and you'll see stuff like that are able to play original hardware, but very seldomly do you see the actual developer itself. That's effectively like, imagine if Sega put out a new Dreamcast. You know what I mean? Yeah. Where you could throw in the discs and play all the original games. So I was immediately sold because I've wanted a 2600 for quite a while, but sometimes the hardware can be a little wonky in terms of the ability to read games. Getting repairs on it are a pain. And just finding them for a fair price, it fluctuates a lot. And so effectively being able to get a Atari 2600 that I know for a fact the hardware will work flawlessly. I don't have to worry about connections to my TV. I could put it right there in my living room with the rest of my consoles and it functions perfectly. And I could just focus on picking up classic cartridges, which are super inexpensive, as a heads up for anybody who's a collector. Atari 2600 and 7800 games, unless you're talking about a super rare game, are incredibly inexpensive because the public swell, there's kind of ebbs and flows and interest of collecting old games. Right now we are on the GameCube right now, and it's kind of fluctuated. It's going a little bit to like PS2, PS3, but it's mostly hovered around GameCube. We long past the 2600 interest phase. So right now, if you're looking to collect these games, this is a great direction to go. And so I'm absolutely sold on it. I got it. Again, it is the 2600 and 7800. So like a lot of these games are, if you don't have an appreciation for very old school stuff, I'm talking 78 to 83 type games, this is probably not going to be for you. Or 75 to 83. This will not be for you. So I don't suggest you guys get this for your kids or anything like that. I don't know if they're going to like this very much. But I there's tons of like really great midway games that I actually really enjoy for Atari. So I'm absolutely into this. Only complaint I would say is with the pre-install, or not the pre-install, but the cartridge that comes to 10 is a little light. I figured they could put a couple more in there, but oh well, I'll take it. So I already pre-ordered this. Do you have any interest in this whatsoever?
Yeah, so again, I didn't hear about this until you basically sent it to me, so I did pre-order as right now as we speak, just in case. But yeah, no, I think it's a very cool thing. I think it's like you said, it's almost a step above like the NES Classic or the NES Classic. Yeah. Because those games, you had to have the games that were on it, and that was it. Unless you went and jailbroke it. Besides, your cartridge did not fit. I mean, I think the original SNES cartridge was bigger than the SNES Classic.
Yeah, I put them together. It's pretty close. Yeah,
it's nuts. So to have, there are people who are out there who have like crazy Atari collections, and like you said, the hardware is a little wonky. You gotta go through you have to go through dongles to get it on a modern TV.
Oh yeah, forget it. And it looks terrible when you do.
It looks terrible that way. So having something you can just plug right into an HDMI is gonna be really cool, and have your classic games plug in right in there is fantastic. But yeah, this is again something to specific people, like people like us who would like to have sort of that nostalgic timing. And for the older adults who are like, I only used to play the Atari. Well, what's your excuse now? Here it is. It's not a modern control, but like you said, unless the young kids are having an old time sort of reflecting, you can't give this to someone who knows. You can't give this to like new generation of kids, right? Because they're gonna see the stick in one button. What do I do with this?
Where are the Kingdom?
Right, they're like, where are the triggers? But there is an extent. I do agree with you. A 10-in-1 cartridge. That's kind of
it's a little light.
It's a little light there. You can add a couple more. But again, like you said, they're super inexpensive to find. I mean, retro stores are full of them. You have, like you said,
they'll practically pay you to take it off their hands, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, cents sometimes, and then you do have the reprints right now. I'm seeing, because it's all listed as funnily, like you said, funnily enough, by Deep Silver is who is technically selling this all on Amazon. But you know, yeah, they have a new reprint of Berserk.
It's like $30 though. That's the only reason why I'm like, hell no.
That's
not a little $30 Atari
that's a little
game.
nuts. But Mr. Run and Jump, these are some classic games, which who knows? I mean, there's people who maybe just legit never played them, and I understand why. But this is something really cool, and I just also like to look at the Atari just because it's got that classic look to it. It's got the little wood grain on the front. Yep. It's gonna be nuts when I have this over, and if I bring my parents over, they're gonna be like, "What are you doing?" And just break out the 2600, you know. So it's interesting. Again, something that kind of just snuck out in the quiet, but it is something I'm generally excited for. Once you sent it to me and I watched the trailer or whatever the video that they have with it, I think this is fantastic. I think this is great, and the price point, like you said, right where it needs to be. I think that's a justifiable price point.
Oh yeah, and that's the big thing. That price is what sold me on it. Just the 130 is just enough because it, you know, the 130 combined with the ability to play original hardware. If it was just a plug and play, I probably wouldn't be that interested. Like,
same.
It's cool. I like a collector's item, but this is actually like functional because like this will actually fill a hole in my collection. Like, I didn't have any Atari stuff because it's always the hardware. It's never the games that kind of block me from it. Like, well, that's not true. There's the Saturn, but that's a whole different thing. But it's mostly the hardware that I just haven't been able to scrounge up the time and resources to track down a working, well kept of 2600. And so this kind of fills that, so I can just jump straight into collecting the games. I've been wanting to play Pitfall on original hardware for many years now, so I'm very stoked about this, and it's a decent time for it. It's in time for the holidays and stuff like that. And what I like about it, it is kind of crazy because I wouldn't have thought, you know, in 2023 to have much positive to say about Atari after the whole VCS thing. If anything, this is what I felt like they should have been doing, not weird promises of some pseudo BS console that is supposedly partially a PC and compete with modern gaming. It's trash. This is what I think makes a lot of sense for them to be doing, is just like literally do what worked previously, just make it work on a modern TV. And I would absolutely love to see more. Like, Intellivision should be doing this, if anything. Forget the Amico, God knows where that is. But like, we need I think about the ColecoVision and just all these cool things. The Magnavox Odyssey, or that could play original hardware. I mean, if Sega could do this, imagine like a working proper like Saturn re-release or like Genesis re-release. That, again, it's just a pain to deal with the original hardware, so if you could find it. Genesises are easy to find, you could find those, but like Dreamcast and Saturns can be kind of a pain. I just think of all the potentials that this kind of opens up. Again, I don't know if anybody but Atari is even interested. I know with some of those other companies, they're not in the console space anymore, so the likelihood of that happening is very low. Like Magnavox is not. I don't even know who owns that anymore, so I don't know where they're coming from. And Nintendo, you know, they have a different strategy in terms of handling their older hardware. But yeah, I would love for more companies to do this, because I feel like that is one of the biggest blockers that I hear people talk about. Like, oh, I would love to play Mario Party 5, but like finding a GameCube is kind of annoying now. Or finding a PSP, or like, it's always the hardware. And so if you can eliminate that for people and just worry about the games, go to your local game exchange or whatever, or eBay or whatever, and you could just, you buy your Guitar Hero or buy this or buy that and just hook it up into this new thing. You don't have to worry about HDMI upscaler BS connecting it to your, or breaking out the CRT to play Duck Hunt. Just don't worry about all that. Just hook up this console. Like, I feel like that would solve a lot of problems. It's even for the casual gamers, like the older gamers that are like maybe taking the nostalgia trips, that once upon a time plug and plays kind of satisfied this. This is the natural evolution of that. It's like it's literally your 2600 from when you were a kid. Like it's the same thing, just brand new. Like, have a blast. Like, I think that's exciting for like, I bet there's gonna be a whole generation of dads just losing it in November when this come out. You know what I mean?
Yep. Oh, absolutely. They brought it up.
Yeah, for sure. So that's all the stories we have for you guys this week. A very solid week for stories. There are very slight, and I'm not bringing this up as a story, but small Microsoft acquisition stuff, but it is evolving. They've restructuring deals, so probably in the next episode we can dedicate a little bit of time if there's any evolutions on that. But as of right now, I know there was some kind of CMA restructuring stuff they're doing to try to still get that through. So God bless Phil Spencer. Have a blast. Good luck getting it through. But yeah, this has been the NeoVintage podcast. We hope to see you guys next week. I'm Drew Brell, and I'm here with
Steve,
and we'll see you guys in the next episode.